My name is Shabnam Rezaei. I am the co-founder of Big Bad Boo Studios and the SVOD platform Oznoz. At Big Bad Boo, we create cartoons for kids that are entertaining and funny and inclusive and bold. I was born in Iran. Best memories of my childhood would be summers, spending all summer at the pool, all day long, from morning till night. I had a great neighbor who also had a pool, so she would come over for play dates. And we did all kinds of imagination games like tea parties, and we would make up castles and forts. My dad is a huge storyteller. And from the time I can remember, as young as I can remember, he would tell us stories at night. And one of the big ones he would tell were the stories of 1001 Nights. They've all been brought together in the original tale by a female storyteller named Shahrzad, who tells the story. And in the original tale, she's trying to stay alive because the king wants to kill her. It's a long story, which we can get to if you want. But what that does is it makes her tell a story every night and leave the ending until the next day so that the king doesn't kill her because she has the goods, and the goods are the story. So my dad would tell me one story every night, and like Shahrzad, he would leave the ending until the next night. So I think from very early on, I knew that story is gold, and story is excitement and passion, and it's what brings people together. Later on, I moved to Vienna when I was about 10 years old. The Iran-Iraq war started. The Iranian army was getting decimated, and hence younger and younger men were being drafted into the war because Iran didn't have weapons, and the only way they could battle the Iraq army was to just send more humans. The draft age started at 18, it went down to 17, and eventually ended at 14, and my brother was 13. This was around 1984. Because my parents were afraid that my brother would be drafted into war, they moved us to Vienna. And I attended the American International School, which really were my formative years, and a big part of who I am is being exposed to this international education, being exposed to kids from all over the world, speaking 3 or 4 languages, each of them, growing up in an environment where I would hear German on the street, speak Farsi at home, and most of my schooling was in English. It was such a rich upbringing. And so that for me has also been a huge part of the mark that I'm trying to make with my shows in terms of creating cosmopolitan children. I watched a lot of television in Tehran. Most of the shows were in Farsi. So I was exposed to most of the Disney films. I remember Cinderella being one of my favorites. Every day after school, I would rush home to watch it. I knew every scene, I knew every line. And the animation, I remember my dad watching it with me and explaining to me the animation process. And we were both in such awe of the art that it took to create this incredible story. That's the time when they begin it. In Vienna, we had Sky Channel, which was a UK channel. And there, they had old reruns of American shows like The Green Acres and Brady Bunch and I Dream of Jeannie. So those are some of my favorite shows.
Master, which would you prefer? Chicken, fish?
I graduated and came to the US to study computer science engineering and German literature. I started a career on Wall Street where I worked at a financial software company that was a boutique company servicing banks. And every time I would tell people what I do, their eyes would glaze over because it was so boring. But what happened was I was living across the street from the World Trade Center during 9/11. And September 11th happened. And right after that, there was an immediate backlash in media towards Iranians and larger group being Middle Easterners, all being terrorists. And I knew that Iran was so different than what was being portrayed in the media, and it just wasn't fair. So I felt like I had to do something. Didn't know what to do. So I started an online magazine called Persian Mirror, and I just started writing articles about Persian history, traditions, culture, movies, food, to just humanize and normalize Iranians. And through Persian Mirror, I met this aspiring writer-director who had written the first script for Bobak and Friends, The First No Ruse. And it was at that moment where my light bulb went off. And what happened was I realized that I was trying to change adults' minds about Iranians. And I realized that you can't really change adults' minds about politics in the world. But what I can do is change children's minds and influence children and help them be educated and be more cosmopolitan, international children. And the concept of being able to influence children really excites me because I feel like it's a superpower. I feel like with it, I can change children today that are going to be adults of tomorrow. So in a way, I have a time machine and I'm reaching into the future and changing the future. And that's what excites me. Kids look to television for being validated and for connecting with their own identity and being confident in who they are. And what better gift to give a child than the gift of self-confidence? So our development process tends to revolve around the issues and topics that we think are critical for children to be aware of, to learn about, and to do something about. So the look of it has to come almost at the same time as the idea. I really feel like if you have the right partners, they make you better. So I'm always looking for people that are better than I am, and I'm always the weak link. That's how I look at things. What's important for us, though, is that we do it right and that we're authentic. So while I can tell the story of Persian children, I can't necessarily do that for my Chinese characters or the gay family that we have. So what we try and do is we try and make sure behind the scenes our creatives, not just in the writer's room, but also in our studios, in the animators, the character designers, the board artists, all the way through to post-production. We, in fact, have participated and started initiatives to bring more color, not just on television, but behind the screen. If we can encourage young writers, young creators who have different stories to tell, then we've done an incredible thing. You know, people go through difficult times. So if we can provide shows that tell children that they're okay just the way they are, that they can be who they are as they are, that they don't need to change themselves for other people, and that they should reach a hand out and include other children that may be quote unquote different, then I think we've done something incredible. So with our shows, 16 Hudson, which is a show about 4 kids that live in a big city and they come from different backgrounds. It's the first show in North America to have a main character with 2 fathers as something that's completely normal. Again, trying to normalize what others might say is different about a character. And then The Bravest Knight, the story of a prince and a knight who get married and adopt a young girl named Nia who wants to be a brave knight like her father. If you look at sort of the series of our work so far with a show called Mixed Nuts, which was the follow-up to Bobak and Friends, and then after that, we did 1001 Nights, which was a nod to my dad telling me these stories. I was able to realize these stories for the first time in animated form for children with a female storyteller that's connecting them and making them very modern and child-friendly. Even that show has threads of civic education, gender equity, inclusiveness, diversity, multiculturalism, empathy. These are all values that are really important to us. And I think something that, now that you know a little bit about my background, you know that it was something that was always there for me growing up.